today.
Well, what you're going to hear a little bit is somebody who not only was stationed at Fort Hood and who knows the culture of the area and the amount of people that are there. We're talking about 70,000 people that are at Fort Hood at any given time, but also somebody who knows a little bit about PTSD. Let's welcome right now to America's Forum. He is a former veteran. He was in Desert Shield, and he was stationed overseas. Also, as I mentioned, stationed at Fort Hood in the early 90s. Andy Rubenstein joins us today. Andy, thanks so much for being with us and sharing the stories.
Hey, thanks, Ed. How are you?
Very good, Andy. Let's make something, and you're not shy about this at all, to point this right out. You are suffering from, and you have been diagnosed with PTSD, correct?
Yes, for many years.
So let's look at what the specialist Ivan Lopez did, because as soon as the news comes out, there is discussion about that he was not actually diagnosed with PTSD, but he was being evaluated for post-traumatic stress disorder. And something that you and so many of the other military veterans who are being treated for PTSD are angry at, is what I'm getting, is that every time those four letters come out, the media, in many cases, and Americans seem to knee-jerk and think that immediately there has to be violence here, potential mayhem and homicide involved. And I got that in our conversation earlier today, that angers you, correct?
It does anger me because those four letters, all of a sudden people think that, oh, we're all violent and, you know, all we do is think about the war and we're going to take it upon people and anything like that, where there are many people that I know that are at the current VA that I attend weekly, if not monthly, and they're very calm and no violence whatsoever. I mean, the bottom line is that when you suffer from PTSD, you just have to stay away from things that are triggers. And for me, I don't have any trigger points to where I would become violent because I'm just not a violent person.
Now, you have 24-hour availability to talk with somebody. Apparently, you have phones that you can get on the line, somebody with a counselor. Is that correct?
Well, part of the Veterans Administration, they have a 1-800 number that we could call at any time that we need. And if we feel like we're going to harm ourselves or harm other people, we could just contact them and talk to them. And what they do is they send a message over to our doctor, and then our doctor will follow up with us. Or if it's during the day and we just want to talk to someone, we could just actually email our specific doctor through the Veterans Administration website.
I also get the feeling, Andy, speaking to you and many other veterans, that the biggest issue that you have is you have this availability here, but with the tens of thousands of veterans who are either being diagnosed, have been diagnosed, being treated for some sort of mental issue, that there simply is not enough doctors, that there's not enough groups. In many ways, they're falling short in treating your needs, correct?
Yeah, I would say that they're falling short, but on the other sense, I have to say that they're doing much better. When we discussed earlier, I mentioned Vietnam. In Vietnam, there was just nothing there. Now there are 24-hour access. There are groups. The problem is there's just not enough doctors and there's not enough psychotherapists. And once they get all those people on board, then I think, you know, ultimately the problem will never go away, but we'll be able to be seen more frequently.
Andy, we thank you very much for your time and your candor, offering your own experience. I'm curious, since you spent some time at Fort Hood in the early 90s, and we've really seen a change some 20 years before you were at Fort Hood, I guess when Jimmy Carter was Commander-in-Chief, we moved collectively to restrict access to arms and to ammo on every military base in the country. Now, the details are just coming in on the situation with Specialist Lopez yesterday, but in your situation, Andy, if there are policy changes that need to be implemented based on what we understand today, what would you be advocating right now in terms of access to the base and access to firearms?
Well, listen, Fort Hood is huge. I'm talking 70,000 plus people. It's basically a city. If they were to literally check everyone that came in and out of that base as if, say, like a TSA would do, the backlog to get on the base would be miles long. So it seems literally impossible. Another thing the news came out was they constantly said, and I'm sure a lot of people saw this, well, the guy was in uniform. Well, of course he was in uniform because he's a military soldier. We didn't walk around in civilian clothes and work. We walked around in military gear. Now, as far as your question about the weapons, look, things happen. I'm not saying that it's going to be perfect. However, it's up to your sergeants, it's up to your platoon leaders, and if anybody sees that something is wrong, personally, you have to report it, just like you would do in civilian.
And Andy, John Bachman here, and thank you very much for your service. And I wanted to ask you personally, you mentioned some of the resources that are there for vets. You say it's getting better, but what else can be done up until this point? Because we both know that it's not quite where it should be at this time. How do we advocate so that folks like yourself and other veterans out there can get the help that they need?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, the help is there. The problem is do the vets want it? There are a lot of vets that do not want to be part of the Veterans Administration because they feel that they don't get treated fairly. For me, I think I get treated fairly. There's not many people that can say, "Hey, listen, you get free health care, you're free prescriptions. All you have to do is you might have to wait a little bit at the doctor." Look, I'm pretty patient, so I appreciate what they do and everything they do for me. But there are people that just don't want to deal with the VA, and those are the people that we need to reach out to and say, listen, the VA wants you to come over, and they want you. If you need help, they'll help you with anything as far as mental health, physical health. They'll help you with.
Now, is there still a stigma, Andy? We heard President Bush, George W. Bush, recently talk about dropping the D from PTSD and trying to change that a little bit, making it so folks wouldn't consider this a disorder, so to speak. But do you feel like there's still a stigma there, and is that why some people might not want this help or seek it out?
Yeah, there's not many people like me that will just come out and say they have PTSD. I'm telling you now. I go to groups. Sometimes I'll go to group therapy over at the Broward County Veterans Administration, and there's still people that are there. They're like, yeah, I got PTSD, but I don't want to talk about it. Look, your PTSD might be different from mine. I saw some things there that you might not see. So it's just everybody's different. Everybody's mentality is different. And it all depends on how you treat it and how you want to be treated. If you don't want help in anything, you're just not going to get it.
Andy, it is a stigma for some people to be known and for people to know that they suffer from PTSD. This probably was, and allegedly, we don't know, a weapon that was bought off base and was purchased legally. If you were purchasing a weapon, would you have any problem with someone doing a background check on you and knowing that you were diagnosed with PTSD?
No, not at all. And a matter of fact, I don't know if I'm going to be in a minority or a majority on this, but if someone is mentally incapable of holding a weapon responsibly, they shouldn't carry it anyway. And if that means that they have to go into our VA records to determine that I've been quote unquote diagnosed with PTSD, then I'm good with that. And you know something, I wouldn't even try to get one anyway. But yes, to answer your question, yeah, I do think that they should have stricter laws for mental health, and that is also maybe throw it on the application. Were you ever in a war zone? And in fact, the case, are you been diagnosed with PTSD? And
Andy, we very much appreciate. We're going to have to leave it there because of time, but we appreciate your candor and your insights, and we look forward to talking with you again. Ed, good job efforting that for us.